me tell you, there is nothing more painful than wanting to hug your daughter and you know you can't because it hurts her, right? And like you have to fight every single bit of your urge. Like she gets scared, or like she would get scared, or she would be hurting. What do you do as a parent? You grab them and hug them, right? I can't do that. That would make it worse. That like it scares her.
Most business advice ignores your family. This podcast doesn't. Welcome to Family-Oriented Business Growers. Hey, welcome to all of you bandits and chilies. Today's guest started his window cleaning business about 26 years ago and has since developed SqueegeeU for window cleaning training, both technical and business. Welcome, Gabriel Gutierrez. How are you?
Hey, good. How you doing, Mark? Nice to talk with you.
I'm doing very well. At that time of recording, I jumped on your podcast a couple of days ago. We had a really good chat, and here we are doing the reverse, and I get to learn a little bit more about you, which I'm excited to do. So maybe just paint a little bit of a picture. You know, if you could just like condense the last 26 years
26
or more
years,
into,
2 minutes, got it.
Just, piece of cake.
Well, I came into window cleaning like a lot of window cleaners. I knew of somebody who did it. My wife and I had been talking about starting our own business somehow. I was working at the bank. She was working as a receptionist, and we were just like, man, we got something better than this. So we knew a friend who had his own business. He was a window cleaner. I really wasn't looking to become a window cleaner. I just wanted to pick his brain about starting a business and what that's involved. I hadn't really decided what I wanted to do. And he was just like, oh, why don't you become a window cleaner? Here, I'll give you some accounts. I'll give you some equipment. I'll do your training, blah, 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 and it kind of scared me. So I backed off at first, and I said, oh, no, I don't think I'm ready to do that. So I went back and told my wife about our conversation, and she says, well, how much was he selling the accounts for? And I said, I don't know. It's like, well, how much equipment were you going to get? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, before you say no, why don't you get some more information and see if this might actually work? I called him back. We met up. He brought all the equipment. He gave me about an hour's training. And lo and behold, by that, I had a route. I had a small storefront route. I had a bunch of little, $15, $25 jobs. But it came out to about $600 a month in work. So as far as getting started in a new business, I mean, you really can't beat that. He sold it to me for $600, included the equipment I needed. I just figured, well, worst case scenario, if I don't like it, I'll sell it to somebody else for $600, have them take over the routes. It was probably a good 6 months before I realized that this was something I could do. I had a lot of frustrations in those 6 months, but by that time I got to the point where I could see myself. So little by little grew it. I was still working at the bank. As I got more window cleaning accounts, I was cutting back my hours at the bank. And then I got to about 19 hours a week. And that was the minimum you could work to stay an employee. So I had to make a choice. Do I make the jump? And I did. And then of course, at that time, then all the jobs went away, right? So we struggled for about 2 years after that, and to finally get a solid enough customer base where we could actually live off of it. Then we had our daughter in 2009. And when that happened, recognized that I was running like a gig business. I really wasn't putting any work into it. I wasn't advertising. I wasn't trying to grow the business at all. It was just all literal word of mouth. If someone wanted it and they called and they took the time to call me, I'd do the job. And once I realized how expensive it is having a kid, I realized it had to become something more than what I was doing. So that's when I actually started trying to grow, ran into a lot of problems, did well, didn't do well. And then in about 2017, I found the IWCA, which is the International Window Cleaners Association. And I went to a couple conventions. I started making connections with people who have become longtime mentors to me, still friends to this day. These individuals who took me under their wing, gave me awesome advice, stuff that I just wouldn't have heard from anybody else except for window cleaners who had gone through what I've gone through. And by that time, now I actually had, my business was starting to make money, and it was no longer this albatross around my neck that was kind of keeping me down, And so I just finally got to where I could now give back to the community. And so I became a board member of the IWCA, and I've done a lot of things in the industry as far as we started a group called Into the Flow Group, which recently, it's a group that's designed for education, safety, and philanthropy. And so we just raised $15,000 for a window cleaner had fallen off of a ladder to help cover his medical bills. We do those fundraisers maybe twice a year, but the Facebook group itself is just meant to be a place place where anybody can come ask a question. There's no stupid questions. You're not going to get trolls coming on you. You're not going to get drilled. We delete those comments if we see anything like that. We want people to feel comfortable to ask the questions that they need to know, regardless of where they're at in their window cleaning journey. And that way they can get the help that they need. So, but yeah, that's pretty much my story in the industry. And now I started SqueegeeU, like you mentioned, and hoping to continue that passion of teaching other people how to clean windows and how to avoid the mistakes that I made so many years ago.
Yeah. Thanks very much for sharing all of that. The $15,000 raised as a community effort is really just amazing, and it's such a powerful thing to have these little online community hubs that are able to do that kind of a thing, and just I think that speaks to the connection of the group as well, to really be able to do that, which is just fantastic.
And I should just say too, it's the tribute to the vendors as well. So like, for instance, WCR, they have a window cleaner relief fund. They donated $5,000 right off the bat. IWCA has a charity wing called the IWCLF. They donated $4,000 right off the bat. And then like ABC Window Cleaning, they donated like a $1,500 water fed system. People donating poles. We had even business owners saying, "Hey, I've got this brush that I don't use anymore, but it's brand new. You know, I never use it. It's brand new. I'll offer that up in the auction." And so all of those people, from the big vendors who gave a lot of money to the smaller guys who were just, "Hey, can you auction this for $50? Let's try and raise $50 for this." That's just awesome. And I love, we've been able to do about 7 or 8 of these since we've been Into the Flow. And each time it's just really neat to see everybody come together for that.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. And it's, I think that's a really good way to sort of thread the needle between like what people want to do and also just making it practical for them to do it. Because maybe someone's like, well, like I'd love to give something, but I don't, but then when you put it even in an auction sort of setup like that, it's like, actually, you know what, I did make a mistake and I purchased that piece of equipment, which I'm never using.
Right.
Yeah. Just going way back to your story actually of coming across the opportunity for the shop front window round actually kind of reminded me of the inverse of like Jack and the Beanstalk, in which you've gone back to your wife and she's like, "Well, did you ask about the beans?
Did you buy the beans?
And then
did you actually see the beans?"
Yeah, like, I mean, these they sound like they like magic beans. I don't know. We should learn more. But then when you bought the magic beans, buying the shop front window round, I feel like this is a common question that a lot of people would have, because one of the strong things that we had in our business, more or less from the get-go, was some shop front window runs that were just a really solid foothold. It didn't matter if it was rain, hail, or shine. We had these consistent jobs that we would just go and do, even if it was like literally just like pelting rain at the glass. I'd be cleaning them because you were on the schedule and this was my income. But it doesn't matter, because it's like, it's still going to look, if I cleaned it whilst it was raining, or if I cleaned it and it rained the day after, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to be there next week or another week anyway.
Right.
And it's just about the maintenance. It really like kept that cash flow year round.
Yes.
But for someone to start a shop run is really difficult, especially if you don't buy into one. So from your experience and working with people, what have you seen with that? Like, do you think that it's worth it for someone to try and start a shop run from scratch, or do they really need to buy in to make that work?
I think you have to buy into one, honestly. It worked out for me because it was just a small route, right? It's $600 a month. That's not much, but it was perfect because I had a full-time job already. So I was already working and I had a day off and I could do all of that in one day. So I could, make an extra, was $150 that week just by doing the windows and then, going on to my regular job. And then as I started picking up other little jobs around that area, that's when I started kind of growing it. And then I cut off a day of work. So now I was only 3 days at the bank, 2 days doing windows. And so I got to grow that route gradually, as opposed to trying to right away come in, I need to pick up 5 accounts this week, otherwise I'm going to starve, I didn't have that pressure. I could just do the job. I went to the next, the shop on this side, the shop on that side, talk to the owners. Hey, let me do a little demonstration. I'll just show you how nice your windows could look if you just hired me. I'd clean one window and then say, hey, give me a call. Here's my card. And I just little by little, I was able to kind of strengthen that route and kind of fill in holes where maybe I had a little bit of too long of a drive than I should have. And So I was able to kind of find jobs along that route. And so by the time it took me about 2 years, I had a pretty decent route for a single owner operator, you know.
Yeah.
The downside is that it's, and I learned this a little later, is there is a opportunity cost to that, because the routes, of course, are less profit than like a residential job. So I had so many routes that I only had about 2 days, you know, once I'm doing windows by myself or on its own. I only had really 2 days for residential, which is the moneymaker. You know, I made more money in those 2 days than I did the 3 days that I was doing route work. And when you're not a business minded person, you're just thinking, I need work. You don't really think about what kind of work am I getting for, you know? And so saying no is not really in your vocabulary. And you have to learn that it's okay to say no to certain jobs if they aren't the right jobs. And that took me way longer than it should have to learn, for sure. Because you're always, you know, when you are a single owner operator and that mortgage getting paid depends on that check coming in, you're afraid to say no to jobs that are a sure thing, like a lower, you know, wage, or a lower profit commercial job that you know you're going to have every month, to the keeping it open in the event that a residential calls, and you just don't know if the residential is going to call. So that's that fine balance that really took a long time for me to find, to feel confident enough to say no to those jobs, because, well, someone's going to call. I don't know who, I just know they're going to call.
Yeah. Picking the right jobs, saying no to the wrong ones really reduces a lot of friction as well. Just back to the route side of it, like, I think obviously the big advantage is that consistency around. Another big advantage is it's a great place to put someone and train.
That's it.
Like, what you were just saying about that capacity, when you get, I assume this is probably literally what happened for you, but like, when you get someone on and it's easy to sort of train them to do that successfully for shop fronts than it is for houses, they can take that over quicker, which then in that equation, whilst you're still on the tools, is going to free you up to do more houses. And they can like hone their skills in an environment that doesn't have tracks, it doesn't have screens, it doesn't have pets and kids, and
it doesn't have customers staring at you
really closely. Yeah. Like, let me just set up my lawn chair and binoculars to the window cleaners here. So there's a lot of advantages that way. The struggle, I think, with that model is that if you view it as a sales exercise, like you're going to this one job that you have and then you're trying to sell the 10 jobs around it.
Yes.
It's not that much easier to sell those jobs than it is to sell a residential job. And 100%. The residential job might be worth $500 or $1,000 or whatever right off the bat. And this job might be worth $25.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And it might be worth $25 every month or every 2 weeks or whatever. But, even over the course of the year, that's still not that much. And
I think it really depends on the area as well. I know some window cleaners in the United States, they live off of those routes, but they are one of just a few window cleaners. So they have that weight to say, hey, this is how much I charge. You don't like it, go to the other guy. And if the other guy is terrible, well, now you're the best option, and they're willing to pay it. So they're able to. Or if
the other guy's great, but his rates are also like good.
Yes.
Yes.
So with me in my area, we've got about 1 million people in Tucson and the surrounding areas, and we've got like 150 window cleaners, you know.
Yeah.
Not all are registered, not all are licensed or legal really, but we have a ton of window cleaners, and they all want those route work. So for now, where I'm at in the business, it doesn't make sense to go after those.
Yeah.
If we get called for a bid, it's a decent sized commercial job, we'll go bid it, but we bid it to make the same money that we would on a residential job. And so we only close on maybe 15 to 20% of those. The ones we close on are typically the people who are tired of the 50 other window cleaners they've tried, and they don't show up, or they do a horrible job, or they're rude to their staff or whatever. And now they're like, okay, we're willing to pay some money to have a quality company come in. And that's usually by the time, we come into play, that's what they've gone through. So we just picked up it was a bank, a credit union, 2 buildings. I had cleaned them years ago, and I raised my rates and they dropped me, which I was fine with. I figured that's what was going to happen. And I happened to know the window cleaners who had done it before me. And the last one was a really good friend of mine, and he ended up not wanting to do it anymore. They called us, and we just got the bid on that. But of course, it's probably about 4 times as much as I charged the last time. But Yeah, if it all came around, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you just have to kind of
that's
know
it.
what your worth is, and when you've got an established company or business in an area, you just have to make sure you know what you're worth and stick to your guns on that.
Yeah, yeah, and whether it's route work or whether it's residential or larger commercial or anything, really, it's your points of difference and it's the customer relationship that you build that is going to defend against somebody else coming in and undercutting and all that sort of stuff. And that just looks a little bit different between residential and say a shop front. And another thing with the shop fronts that it makes it just a bit trickier is that you're dealing with layers of decision makers. Like if you go to get a shop front job, you might be
Yes.
talking to somebody who's just running retail, but then like they're not the manager. And then you talk to the manager, but they're not the area manager who it needs to go back to head
Right.
office to be approved for this, so you're going to run into a lot of that, which means that for every, say for a residential job, which might be, $500 compared to $500 worth of shop jobs divided by however many individual shops that is, you're going to have like, a dozen or more decision makers
Yeah.
to get that $500. And then the admin and like the, invoicing and everything, it's broken down into these little chunks. So that there is a lot of that, but it can be really, really powerful as a solid foothold, the seasonality,
Yes.
a lot of those things.
I just want to say real quick, I've literally turned down jobs, like fired customers because of the invoicing headaches. Because you got to use their portal and you got to fill out just right, and you got to get signatures, and then you got to get the invoice number and then the PO number. And I say, you know what, I'm done. Find someone else. We're doing more work in the office than we actually did when we were on site cleaning that window.
Yeah, 100%. We had one that they wanted us to do the job, send the invoice, and then collect the payment the next time around, which doesn't sound that bad on the face of it, but that process would just break down. And then we'd speak to the technician would speak to a different person the next time they were in the shop. And then every time they'd be on the phone to someone, they'd be checking the system to make sure that they're not paying an invoice that's already been paid.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing? Like this is a $30 job. And every single time, it's just this huge admin headache for them and for us. And we're just like, you either need to just pay us this way or like find someone else because it's just not worth it. Yeah, 100%. So going forward from there, let's just like fast forward until, was it 2009 that your daughter was born?
Yeah.
So that obviously changes your perspective on a lot of things. And one of the things that you mentioned was that you realized how much it cost, right, to have a kid. And I actually think that that's a really interesting analogy too with the business, like because raising prices and pricing correctly is a whole thing. And one of my mentors, shout out to Joshua Latimer, one of the things that he says that's really like instilled in my brain is that you need to price for tomorrow's business. So if you are looking to grow your business to the next level, that next level has additional expenses. If you're now building a business that has an admin layer or an ops manager or whatever, like that money is going to have to come. And if you want to get there from where you are, you should be factoring that in now so that you're building the runway to have those things. And I think the same could be said, right? We've got a baby on the way. Maybe we need to look at our economics and all that sort of stuff. Now, in reality, for both of us, that's not necessarily the way it works. You kind of get to the problem and you're like, oh, wait, hold on, where's the money? But so on the business front and then on the, like just the worldview shift, kind of what happened at that point within your journey? That is a great question, if I don't say so myself. Can't wait to hear the answer in like 14 seconds from now. Just wanted to jump in and let you know about the free time audit designed specifically to save 5 hours per week for parents running cleaning businesses. It takes about 2 minutes to complete and you get your time-saving results straight away. To get your free time audit, join our Facebook group via warplan.au, link in the description. Now, what was that cliffhanger question again? Business front and then on the, like just the worldview shift, kind of what happened at that point within your journey?
Yeah, so it's like I said, about 2017 is kind of when I finally got the guidance I needed. So you're talking 8 years of floundering, of just because I hired. So I had the work. I just didn't want to hire. Now I recognize, hey, if I'm going to make the money I need to make, I need to have multiple employees. I need to have 2 or 3 employees. So I hired first right away. Because now I'm in go mode, right? I'm dad. I got to provide. My wife wanted to stay home with the baby, and I wanted to give that to her. That's the one thing she had asked when we got married is like, if we have kids, I really want to be a stay-at-home mom. That's really important to me. I want to raise my baby. I don't want to widower sitters. Again, it was not like anything bad about that or if anybody has to do that, but that was just her wish. And I said, I'm going to give that to you. I promised her. So I'm in that mode. So I hired someone right away, had no idea how to hire anybody. He just said, I can do Windows. Hey, great. Come on, join me. And we had this situation where it was during the busy season. So it was great. He had work. I had work. And then he says, hey, I want to, is it okay if I go back home to Mexico to a family for Christmas and New Year's? Sure. That's great, man. Take 2 weeks off, enjoy your family, come back in January and we'll get started again. All right. January 4th came, which was when he was supposed to come. No show, no call, no answering, no nothing. And he had my truck. He had one of my trucks. So I was like, okay, well, maybe he's sick, And, well, it turns out he had an issue with alcoholism. He went on a bender during that whole time and he was just in the wind. So I didn't hear from him until the middle of January, like a later part of January.
Oh,
so about 2 weeks he was gone. He had just no, and he shows up all, head down, feeling horrible. And I talked with him and of course I listened to him. I'm not going to, I know alcoholism is something that's a challenge for a lot of people. But I just told him, I said, look, man, I can't hire you back. I can't, you did this once. I can't trust that you're not going to do it again. I like you. I like you as a person. I wish you well. I hope that you battle this and get control of it so it doesn't hurt your chances, but I can't. So he asked me if he could buy the truck because he liked the truck. So he ended up buying it from me because I'm like, well, I'm not hiring. Forget that. I'm going to do it myself. So I went about another maybe 1.5 to 2 years working by myself as a single owner operator. And I just was pushed. I'm going into the ground, man. I'm just working till 6, 7 o'clock at night. I'm calling people at 8, 9 o'clock to schedule for, the week. And I was just running myself ragged and, it wasn't going to work. I had to figure out another way. So that's when I started there's obviously business people are successful. So I need to learn how to be a business person because I'm not a business person. And, like I mentioned, I started attending the IWCA conventions. I took the classes. There are just so many things I learned from just these really basic classes that I just had I took a profit. It was a person who was kind of ran his business off of the Profit First model, the book that's there. And
yes,
I took that class and it just was so mind blowing. I bought the book, read the book. I just realized how much stuff I was doing wrong. I was throwing everything back into the business, but there was nothing it wasn't providing anything to the business, and I was just kind of throwing band-aids at it. So there was structural things I needed to fix. I needed to fix systems. I needed to install systems and I needed to have things in place so that the business could actually be not just in my brain, but just a thing different from me. And then I met some mentors, some people who would just listen to me and give me advice and tell me what they did. And I love giving advice, but I get frustrated when people don't take it because I always take advice when it comes from someone who I respect and I trust, when I'm asking for it, I always apply it. So it frustrates me when I see people who will ask me and then just disregard it. I'm like, all right, well, you asked me. I gave you some stuff that would really help you. But if you're going to blow it out, then thank you for wasting my time. I don't say that to them, but that's what I'm thinking. But I took it all, man. I was just a sponge. And the growth I had from 2017 to about 2019, 2020 was just, I couldn't have done it without people who were generous with their time and their knowledge to help me. So that's what I wanted to do, was to help others too.
Yeah. All right. I want to chase 3 rabbits from this section.
All right.
So the first one is there's actually an Urban Dictionary term for this, which I think that you'll love. It's called an ask hole. It's somebody who asks for advice but never takes it, right? So don't be an ask hole.
And there are a lot of them in the window cleaning industry.
The second one going back is actually let's go way back. That January, right? You had an employee and a truck that was MIA for 10 days to 2 weeks, that you just longer than you expected, that you just knew nothing about. I feel like listeners hearing that will have inserted their own story in there somewhere, but we all kind of know, right? That sounds like a funny little anecdote story now of oh, can you believe it? Yeah, right. But at the time, right, the feeling of that, and then I don't know what your wife thought about it. I don't even know. Did you tell her what was going on?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, she knew what was going on because I'm sitting there and he didn't show up for work again today. He, and I had scheduled work for 2 people, and I'm
Yeah.
doing it all myself. So I'm like working till 6, 7 o'clock at night, just trying to get that work done, try to keep my promise. Cause again, I'm booked out now because so it's
exactly.
like if I don't get, if I have to move I don't have anywhere to move those jobs to, or we're going to have to work on Sundays,
Oh man.
and I didn't want to.
What year was that? Like, was this
That was
just directly
20.
after your
Yeah,
daughter was born?
it was like 2000 and 2010, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was
so
a 2009 to 2010 transition is when that happened.
Yeah. So she's essentially at home with a baby or a very, very young child. And
yes.
Yeah. Like, I think when he did come back, he was probably lucky that he got to talk to you and not your wife. Let's be real.
That is probably true. That's been true for most of our business.
But yeah, so that's that feeling, like when those experiences happen, it feels so massive. And I think that this is a really good thing to remember, is because if someone listening to this is in the middle of one of those situations right now, I use the analogy of it's like the stone in the shoe. It feels so much bigger than it is. When you take your shoe off and you finally tip this thing out and it falls out and you're like, where's the rest of it?
Right.
I was picturing this huge jagged thing just stabbing into the sole of my foot, and it's actually like this tiny little minuscule whatever. Over time, when we look back at it, it's like, oh yeah, that's not so big. But at the time, when the pain is really real, it's a huge thing. The other part of that I wanted to touch on was just like how you didn't know what you didn't know, and that the tricky thing about that is that you don't even know that you need to reach out for help if you are completely unaware of the problems that you even need to solve. And it's sort of the way that you told that story reminded me of like the classic, if you think it's expensive to get the job done right, you should see how expensive it is to hire the cheap guy, right?
Yeah.
I saw one of those posts yesterday on a pressure washing group, and it was just like the pressure washing lines in like a brand new pathway, and that someone's come through and they've just destroyed it basically, right?
And the dead plants along the line there business,
too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So in your case, you said you were floundering for like an additional like 8 or 9 years than you would have been if you'd reached out for help earlier and got that mentorship that eventually turned things around.
Yes.
So it's like, when you think of that as a cost, it's like, oh, maybe the mentorship was going to cost a few bucks or whatever, but 8 or 9 years, and then the time, the struggle, the money that you would have been making if you got the mentorship at the beginning of that 8 or 9 years as opposed to at the end of it, it's huge. So the cost of quote unquote hiring the cheap guy in that equation.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously the business did well enough that I didn't quit, right? And that I didn't just ditch it and go do something else. So
yeah,
I know that had I had proper guidance at that time, I would have made so much more money that time,
Yeah.
I would have taken advantage of things that I just didn't even know existed or didn't think it was that big of a deal. And so though I survived it, and I think that in itself gave a lesson to myself and to my company. But had I had someone to kind of help me navigate it, or just know how to make decisions that, with the business in mind. I made decisions from my gut, from my heart. I gave a little more to the employees, like considerations, and allowed them to kind of mess up more than I probably should have. Like now I would never tolerate, but back then I let things go way too long because I felt bad for them, or I didn't want, I'm thinking of their family. I'm thinking, which all of that is valid, but bottom line is you have to protect your business, and that's what I tell people.
It all flows outwards from there. And you just like, now you just have more context on that. It's not like it's not that you care less about their family. You just have more context around what it means when you tolerate this or that specific thing. Yeah. So, there's so many things. I guess when you got that mentorship, right, and things started to change for your business. Actually, hold on. Sorry. Let's go back one step, because something you just said then made me think of this, right? The danger of a comfortable life, and the business, as you said, it was not so bad that it was not like you were not making any money. It was not like you guys couldn't eat, right?
Right.
But that's sort of where we get stuck, because if it's a 6 out of 10, we can tolerate that. And then it's when things get really hard and it drops to being like a 2 out of 10, and we're like, oh my goodness, we've got to fix this. That then becomes the catalyst for us to do something about it that turns it into a 9 out of 10.
And I think real quick, what Josh had to say was so true, because had I been pricing myself for the future, I would have helped fix so many problems, but I wasn't. I was pricing it to what I was making then. In my mind, and I tell a lot of people this too, my mind was the market price for what I did at that time. And I was not accurate. I had zero data to back that up, that my own idea of what was market price, when other window cleaners were charging almost double what I was charging. But I just didn't know, right?
That's so true, right? Because we believe what we think. Like we think that, oh, well, I thought a thought, so like I'm a pretty reliable source. It's like, not if you don't know though, right? Don't trust everything you think. And
that's right.
That thing of what Josh said about, you need to price for tomorrow's business, to price as you'll need to as you grow into that stage. That is a really good example of the kind of advice that you can only get from a mentor.
Yes.
Because like you can hear that on a podcast and you can apply it to a thing, but somebody who hasn't gone through the next stage of whatever it is that you're trying to do in any aspect of your life can't give you that kind of zoomed out future perspective advice, because that's not the sort of thing that you just think of when you're in the weeds. You're doing all the jobs, you're doing the admin, you're hiring, you're training, you're going home, you're changing nappies, you're tired, you don't have bandwidth. You're not thinking, I wonder what it's going to look like when I bring on that other role that I haven't even figured out yet and how much I'm going to have to pay for that. And maybe I should be pricing that into it. Like that's just not the kind of thought that can occur without some sort of mentoring influence. So I think that just like sort of speaks to the overall value of that. So when things then shifted for you, like what was it that shifted specifically in the business, and what did that look like?
Well, one was thinking of the business as an asset. I had always thought of me as the business. I mean, my business name is Gabe Spotless Window Cleaning. So I always was a part of the business. And once I started viewing it as an asset or a tool, well, if you have a tool, you can tinker with the tool, right? You can do things with it and you can manipulate it to accomplish what you want. And you can hack it, or you can buy new tools, or you can add other attachments to that tool. And now it becomes more valuable to you. And that's once I had that mental shift of seeing the business as separate from me, but as something that I could manipulate to make what I needed out, to get what I needed out of it, that changed my whole mindset. I was raised to be a very stand-up person. And if you put your name on this, then you should be proud of it and blah, blah, blah. And I should say blah, blah, blah. That's very important. But when I started taking myself out of the business, removing my personal self as the business, then what I stopped doing was giving more of myself to the business than it needed, right? And you start seeing that, hey, there's a cost to that. When you emotionally invest in your company, that to that degree, you get a wear and tear on your body, both mentally and physically, that you don't get if you view it as an asset or you view it as a tool. So just like you wouldn't go fit, if your car is going a little slower up a hill, you don't get out and push the car. You just let the car do it. And then if you need to take it in to get fixed, you take it in to get fixed. But that's what I was figuratively doing, was pushing my business myself, instead of saying, hey, wait a second, why is this business not working the way it is? Let me tinker with it. Let me figure out what I'm doing. Let me talk to a mechanic, someone who's been in business longer than me and is where I want to be, and ask them, well, what are they doing? How are they doing to solve this problem? Like, I'll just give you one. I talked to one guy, and one of the things he says is why are you running 2-man crews? And I was like, well, that'll help us to get more jobs done. He goes, no, they're more efficient if you have 1-man crews. And I said, yeah, but I don't have that many trucks. He goes, you will make more to cover the cost of that truck than if you keep them in one truck. So I did. I implemented it. I moved to everyone 1-man crews. Obviously, if it's a bigger job, we just have 2 people go, 2 trucks go and handle the job. But once I went to 1-man crews, I think my profits went up about 30%. It was amazing. It's just something it's very counterintuitive to someone who's not a business person, but he's like, yeah, look, they're there. They can do the job according to how they like to do it. They're not being distracted by someone asking them things. Hey, where's this? Where's that? Are you going to take your break? Are you going to do this? They're not second guessing. Hey, did you do this room ready? No, all of that takes time. All of that is inefficiencies. Yeah. To use the automobile analogy, if we're too emotionally invested, those 1-star review, the feedback that may be negative, it hurts us. We can't take it as data. If we're driving a car and someone pulls up to us and says, hey, your taillight's out, you don't get offended. What are you talking about? My taillight's out. How dare you? How dare you tell me this? You just say, it is. Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to make sure I get that light bulb changed out, right? And you go on and you don't let it affect you personally. So when you get those 1-star reviews, if the business is separate from you, if it's a tool, if it's an asset, then you can take that information and say, oh, okay, they had this bad experience. Was this a case of this is just a one-off and this person is kind of grouchy? Or is this an error in our systems? Is this some type of issue that we can just do a couple tweaks and no one will ever have that issue again? You can look at it as data as opposed to being offended by it and it just gutting you, like you said, because I've had those too. You're like, oh, what did I do? And I'm calling them up. Is there anything we can do to change this? Can you please, no, it's data. Take it. If you earned it, then you earned it, and just make the changes that you need with the data. Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it was a huge effect. Well, first, it was a relief. Just to put it in context, our daughter, she was diagnosed as autistic, I think about 7 years ago. I don't know. It hasn't been that long ago. It's about 4 years ago. She was 13, 14. Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, she was diagnosed. But prior to that, as a child, she was from our appearances, she was normal, loved to do little kid things, loved to dress up as a princess, went to Disneyland, had a great time. Looking back, there were things that we should have seen as signs had we understood what autism was. I had no clue of what autism was. None. Zero. I heard it. You hear autism, you think of Rain Man, right? You think of Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise's Rain Man. And that's what everybody thought. That's kind of, for years, that was kind of the stigma. So a lot of people didn't want to be diagnosed as autistic because of that stigma. You were afraid of being lumped into a group, or I've heard people say, no, I don't want to get tested because then I'm going to use it as a crutch, as that's an excuse for me acting a certain way. And I always respect anybody who's dealing with their own personal health if they have that right to not get a diagnosis. Just from our vantage point, once we understood what our daughter was dealing with, it was like a total paradigm shift of our parenting. I was raised by, I had two parents, loved me. My dad was from military, very disciplined, you do things a certain way. If you don't, you get punished. There's a punishment for every bad decision. There's a reward for every good decision, and it was very cut and dry. And I grew up with that mindset. So obviously I parented just like my dad, it was just very natural. That's what I knew. That's what worked for me. So I parented with my daughter that way. But what we were finding out was she was diagnosed with ADHD early on, but nothing worked. And it was just like, we just felt like we were in this constant cycle of her getting bullied, even by teachers. I mean, here's our daughter who we knew, her biggest fear is upsetting an authority figure, right? And then yet teachers were telling us, your daughter is willfully disobedient. And it just, obviously, all parents are going to be overprotective over their kids, but it just made no logical sense to me. I grew up with a father who, if we were acting up, he would defend the teacher. And that was always my attitude. I always kind of came in there with the teacher has the best interests of the child at heart. If they're saying this, there's a reason. Let's try and find out what the reason is. And this whole experience with my daughter changed that at all. I realized that no, as a parent, you have to be an advocate for your child, and you can't take for granted that the teacher has the best interests of your child at heart. Most of them do. I believe they do, even if they're not educated on what autism is or what other learning disabilities are, but they have a general, idea. But I found out there's a lot of teachers, I shouldn't say a lot, there's a significant enough amount of teachers who are just there to collect a paycheck. And any child who has something that takes more effort to teach them, they really don't want to deal with. And as a result, the worst part, I went to just such a dark place, and I won't share details just out of her privacy. But we literally, as parents, were like, okay, well, I guess our daughter's just not going to get an education because we are not putting her through what she just went through that school year. Thankfully, my wife, in doing research, found a small little private school just down the street from us. It's 10 minutes away from our house. They cater to kids that are neurodiverse, so ADHD, autism, a lot of other, disabilities and stuff like that. And it has just been night and day. It took her about a year because she still had so many trauma, so much PTSD from her old schooling that it took her about a year to learn to trust the teachers. But once she learned to trust them, she just blossomed. It felt like we got our daughter back again. She just blossomed. And now she's able to learn. She's getting good grades. She loves school. She loves that. But a lot of it is with the understanding that autistic people, generally speaking, because as they say, it's a spectrum. So people have the different areas are different for them. So one of the things that I learned that helped me a lot was when they would say spectrum, I always saw it like a slide up, right? They're a little autistic, they're a lot autistic, but that's not what spectrum means. It's more like one of those audio boards, those sound boards, where they've got one gear up, one gear down, so there's a bunch of different symptoms of autism. Some of them have a lot of one, some of them have a little, some of them, and everyone's different. But some that are consistent are, for instance, stimuli. So they're very sensitive to being overstimulated, and they have sensory issues. So I'll give you, this is something that helped paint the picture for me of what our daughter was going through. So she's in middle school. And this is the counselor who's helping us. Once she got her diagnosis, she says, okay, put yourself in this position. Loud noises hurt you. So anytime a loud noise comes, it's like this piercing pain in your ears and in your head. So you get to school, you're on the playground playing with your friend, having a good time, and this bell rings that just jars your head. Now you've got to run down a hallway where there's a bunch of kids, all of them talking, all of them bumping into each other. You're trying to get through this crowd. You get into the classroom, you sit at your desk. What happens? Another loud bell rings in your head. This pain comes in your head. It takes you 5-10 minutes to kind of get settled from that. The teacher's already 10 minutes into teaching a lesson. You missed the whole first part of that lesson that is going to help you to understand the rest of the class. So now you sit in the classroom not understanding what's happening because you missed the important part that does the foundation for the rest of the class. So what do? Well, now you do something else. So you might, if you like drawing, you might start to draw because that's at least you're doing something that can help you from feeling bad. Well, now the teacher sees you drawing and gets mad at you and maybe even scolds you in front of the class and embarrasses you. And now you're really in your hole. And so what autistic and ADHD kids do is it's called masking. They put on a mask. They want to look like everybody else. So even if their whole world inside of them is just being destroyed, to everybody else, they've learned to look a certain way so that nobody knows that, So our daughter was masking all of those years, and it just took such an emotional and physical toll on her because everyone was telling her she was a bad kid and everyone was telling her she was dumb and she wasn't trying and she just exerted herself. And in the meantime, she's got this sensory battle going on at school, So we take her to this new school who understands all that. They keep them in the one class. They don't move. They don't change classes when the teachers change. The teachers rotate around instead of the students. They have 15 minutes breaks between classes. They can go to have a sensory closet, which has like LED lights and soft blankets they can sit down on, really soothing music. Instead of the kids going from class to class, they stay in one class and the teachers rotate on that in the grades, which is really, really awesome because what it does is it gives the kids their own desk, which is very important to them to have their own little place that they can store things and keep things and make their own. And then also they have a sensory room. So like there's a 15-minute break between the classrooms, and in those breaks, they can go into a closet. It's called a sensory closet. So they've got like LED lights and they've got just like a little sound machine to kind of, have things that are relaxing and just kind of get them calmed down from all the sensory issues of being in the classroom. And then they're ready to go on to the next class. And, all of that type of thing is just really, really a blessing because you're not going to find that in public schooling. Obviously they can. It's not because they don't want to. It's just the funding isn't there. So us finding that school was such a big turnaround to help her have the structure and a place where she could feel safe to be able to express how she feels, and to learn without being criticized, to deal with her sensory issues without being made to feel like she was personally a failure for having them. That was really awesome. The second thing that made a big difference was we received counseling too, and we had to relearn how to be a parent. So like me personally, I'm a very huggy person. I grew up I'm Hispanic. So we go to a family party, right? The rule was you get there, you cannot play until you hug every single person in that room, and you cannot leave until you say you hug every single person in the room bye and tell them bye. That was just the rule. And I'm a very huggy person. So my daughter, because of her sensory issues, she doesn't like hugs. She'll tolerate one, but she doesn't like them. So I had to stop hugging her, which is really hard for me. I reserve it for very special occasions. And even then, she's just kind of like, leans over and lets me hug her. The other hard thing too was eye contact. She doesn't like eye contact. She gets really nervous with eye contact. And part of it is because a lot of autistic people have difficulty reading faces. So they're spending too much time trying to read someone's face, that if they see your eyes, it makes them feel self-conscious, because now, did I do something wrong? Did I misread it? Are they angry? Are they not angry? What, they don't know any of that. So they prefer often to look away when you're talking to them, so they can focus on your words rather than try to read your face. And I was taught that to show respect, you look at your parent in the eye, right?
Yeah.
You look at the person who's talking to you in the eye, you pay attention, you stay focused. And then when, then they know that you're showing them the proper respect and you're paying attention. But it's just the opposite with an autistic person. So I had to relearn how to parent, and I also had to relearn how to accept her love for me, because since she wouldn't hug me, I had to learn how to other ways, right? And she wouldn't look at me in the eye when she talked to me. So like, just as an adaptation, for an example, one of our favorite things we do is we go to, well, we call them the swap meet. I know what you call them over there. Like just a place where it's like a big old piece of land. Everybody's got booths and tables, and they're selling their junk basically. But we love to go to the swap meet. She loves finding treasures. She loves looking amongst things and finding something of value. And so she can do her searching, looking at other things, and then we can actually talk and have a conversation, and us just spending time together is that love. That's our hug, is us just doing something together. I'm looking for my tools. She's looking for her little treats, and we just walk and talk, So I've had to relearn how to communicate with her, almost like learning a whole other language, that just because she doesn't want to hug me and just because she doesn't want to look me in the eye, it doesn't mean that she doesn't love me and that she doesn't respect me. I just have to meet her where she's at.
Yeah.
And that's the discipline, that's what's hard, because on one hand, I have to prepare her for the world that's not going to be so understanding about this. But at the same time, am I pushing her too much where I'm causing her pain, right? So it's like, you have to find that balance. Am I making her uncomfortable in a way that she needs to be to learn? Or am I exposing her to something that's causing her pain unnecessarily? And I'm not autistic, so I don't know where those are. So that's a constant battle I have as a parent, especially one that was brought up very as a disciplinarian. I want her to be prepared for the world, but I don't want to cause her unnecessary pains. All of that is kind of the jumble of what we've had to relearn in like the last 4 years. It's just been a lot, but I'm really appreciative that there's so much more information about autism now, and that the spectrum of it, or the specter of it is a better word, of it isn't as bad as it used to be. Now people are a lot more understanding of it, and there's a lot more areas that have consideration for sensory issues, and there's a lot more tools. Like, she has these little things called loops that go into her ear. It helps to muffle a lot of the background noise, which for a lot of autistic people, that's really hard. Background noise is just as loud as the person talking to you. So for them, it helps them to block it out. And now they can actually go to an area where there's a lot of people, like a grocery store or a school or, Costco or whatever,
or a swap meet,
and not be overwhelmed with the sensory issues, or a swap meet. So, there's a lot more things
so thanks,
available.
Gabe, for going into detail on what that journey's been and the changes in understanding. There's at least 2 really good metaphors that you use that I think are really powerful. And the second was the audio board thing. We're dealing with some tech issues and audio issues on this podcast right now. But when you think of it that way, it's like, if this is the default settings that are applied to this audio board, like if you were like a sound technician and you were trying to like set up for a band, like they change everything. But if you have these default settings that are a certain way, and the only way that you could change how the band sounded was to make changes on the other end, like, okay, like, well, maybe we can move this further away from the microphones. Maybe like this needs to be quieter, this needs to be louder, whatever. We're going to change like the acoustics of the building to accommodate a soundboard. That's kind of like what's happening with your daughter and with your family to best accommodate. So I think that's like a really powerful one. And the other thing you said was in the about a year into the new school, once she'd really found her feet, that she was able to just blossom, right? And I think this is a good way to sort of thread the needle between this part of the conversation and the business part of the conversation, because once you understand who or what you're dealing with, and in this, with like having the autism as a framework to understand. It's allowed you to see some of those needs through a different lens, and then put her in an environment where she can flourish. And the same thing I think is really true in our businesses and in our family life and whatever. Like, we have these things going on, and when we better understand that, hey, this is the kind of business that I'm running, or these are the kinds of people I'm dealing with in my family, like, something like that, where it's like, oh, I hadn't realized for the first 14 years that this was the way that it is for my daughter.
Yes.
So I think that's a really like powerful sort of thought of what are we doing in our business that maybe we're trying to fertilize the business with the wrong thing. Maybe we're trying to give the business too much sun or whatever, and there's other areas to focus on. And the other thing, because I had this thought literally yesterday, I sometimes wear earbuds, and I try not to like. I listen to things whilst I'm doing things, right? But I try not to do that when like my family's around or when the kids are around. But when I do, like yesterday, I was doing some stuff around the house, and then my wife and the kids came home, and so I paused what I was listening to, but I still had the earbuds in, and I noticed I was getting frustrated with the noise very quickly, because having them in changes how you're hearing it, right? And so as a result of that, I was like not interacting with that audio sensory data in the same way that I normally would, and I had that moment where I was like, this would be like what that's like for somebody with sensory issues. Like, you have this sort of baseline all the time thing where it's just it like I can't distinguish enough of like what someone's saying, whether they're talking to me, all that kind of stuff. And it was just really frustrating. Like kids, they don't come home. Like we have 3, 5 and under. They don't come home quietly. It's not like everyone waits so that one person talks at a time. But it just gave me a little microcosm insight into like, oh, like I can see what that's like. I can't really fully understand, like, for example, the what you said about like the pain, like the loud noise as being like a pain response. But all of that stuff is so valuable and helpful to get like the insights on. And I think, again, just to follow up with you on a question to kind of thread the needle, like that framework that's given to you, what parallels do you see with that and the frameworks that you learned when you really, turn things, I was going to say turn things around, not even that, just where you really like started to take your business to the next level and you started to see success? Like there was frameworks for that too, right? So what are the parallels you see?
Well, I think kind of what we talked about earlier really plays into this is I work really hard to not invest myself into my business, not to take it so personal. Let me tell you, there is nothing more painful than wanting to hug your daughter and you can't because it hurts her, right? And like you have to fight every single bit of your urge. Like she would get scared or she would be hurting. What do you do as a parent? You grab them and hug them, right? I can't do that. That would make it worse. That like it scares her. If you grab her when she's not expecting it, she goes like this. I mean, it would make a bad situation worse. So you have to stop and think, well, what can I do now to actually be a positive force in my daughter's life at this moment, right? And I think with business, that's the same thing. If you react emotionally, if you react instinctually without really looking at data and really without looking what's the actual result of my actions, you hurt your business. You do. And so you have to separate yourself and again, not take things personally. If you get a bad review or if you get a call from a customer who's upset, my office is always telling me, Gabe, you are the ultimate schmoozer. And it's not that I'm a schmoozer, it's that I listen without getting offended. So if they say, your workers came in and they did this, and I don't know how you can run a company like this and blah, blah, blah. I just have the ability to let them say what they're going to say and say, okay, so if I'm getting this straight, the problem is they came in, they didn't wear shoes, they were being louder than they should have. Is that what's happening? Yeah, that's what happened. I am so sorry. That is not according to our standards. I will have a meeting with them and I'll talk with them. I'm going to, make sure that all of our employees understand this happened and to just refresh them on our standards that That way we can address this issue. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. Thank you for helping me to know this, because we hadn't had this pop up in a while. It shows me as an owner, I need to give this attention, And then they're happy because they told me how they felt. They feel like action is being taken from it. And now I can provide something valuable to my team to help them to know, hey, this happened. You probably weren't the one who did it, and you probably will never do it, but just be aware this is something that fell through the cracks, and we want to make sure we don't let this happen again, And then I'm happy because the customer is happy, added something to the business that made it stronger. And now I'm gone. In the past, I would have been so offended. I might have argued with the person. I might have told them they're wrong. I would have stood up for my employees, and then you lose that opportunity.
You might have tried to give your business a hug when that's not what it needed.
That's it. So you just have to think, okay, maybe this is what my instincts say to do. Is it really what my business needs? Is this really going to help the situation? And so that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me, at least that I've learned, is to remove yourself emotionally from that and not to take things personally. Instead, look at what am I being told here? What information am I given that I can actually use to help my business? So that's one thing for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's zoom forward to the SqueegeeU side of things and just get a little bit more detail on that. Like who is the ideal person or groups of people that SqueegeeU is for? What do they find there? What do the resources look like? What are the different options? Like just talk through them.
Yeah. So SqueegeeU was formed out of my desire to give new window cleaners a platform that I did not have. So as I told my origin story, right, I had a guy sell me some route, give me some equipment. I didn't even know what the names of I knew what squeegee was, but I didn't know anything. I literally didn't know anything else. I just knew it was a bucket. I knew it was a scrubber. It was a pole, and I used Dawn dish soap right in my water. That's all I literally knew. I thought for the longest time, because he gave me two squeegees, he gave me an Ettore brass, 18-inch and an 8-inch. I thought that's the only size squeegees came in for like 3 or 4 years. Like I didn't realize you could have different sizes of squeegees. I just didn't know, So I went through all of that. I learned as I kind of, and I'd like work with another window cleaner, like as a subcontractor on a job, and I'd be watching them like a hawk, like, oh, I saw what they did right there. Wow. I bet you that'll help fix my problem over here. And then I would start practicing it. And I'm a very analytical person anyway, so I'm always trying to figure out how things work. And so over time, because I'm so analytical, by the time I start hiring, which was about 9 years later, I kind of had a little toolbox of things that I had taught myself to kind of help me to fix problems that I was having, right? But I mean, you shouldn't have to take, 5, 6, 7 years to fix problems. So SqueegeeU is designed it's a fundamental, foundational training program where I teach people how to fan, not just like, hey, this is how you fan. You do this, you do this, you do this, and you're done. Yay. I break it down to small little steps, and they don't actually fan the window until a full day of training. Till they actually start fanning. We teach about following the frame. We teach about pivoting, what kind of angles you want to have. We teach about pressure and how to hold the squeegee properly. We just kind of little by little, as we learn, they add it on, and then they go further on the window. So by the end of that first module 1, they're actually fanning, and they're fanning like a professional, not like someone who just looked on YouTube and is trying to figure out on their own. They're fanning like a professional. And that's what I have. I have videos of that on SqueegeeU of some of my students, and it's their first time fanning and just how happy they are, right? And they're going from zero experience to in a day, they're actually fanning. Now, of course, learning how to fan it's just like anything, it's reps. So I'm just teaching them how to get there. It's up to them to continue following through on those lessons. And that's where the videos come in handy. They can have access to them on their phone. If they feel like they're struggling on something, like maybe they're streaking where they weren't streaking a couple days ago, they can go onto one of my videos, watch it, get the reminders, and then try it and adapt it in the field, and then they can go on. So the video portions are meant to be kind of an on the job aid as people are going through their work, that if they feel like they're losing some of their fundamental parts of fanning and it's causing them to have some mistakes, they can kind of do a refresher. It also can be used by employers. As you hire someone new, you can put them through the SqueegeeU program and get, like I said, a foundational training. I'm not teaching rocket science. I'm not teaching fancy fanning skills or tricks or anything like that. It's very fundamental, and it's meant to be efficient. It's meant to reduce mistakes, and it's meant to kind of give them a leg up on their competitors from the beginning, because they're They're not going to learn the bad ways to do it and then have to unlearn it later. They're going to learn the fundamentals, and then they can divide, because we all have our own fanning styles. But if they can have that foundation, now they can go forward learning with that foundation and avoid some of the mistakes that a lot of people make.
I think someone, especially someone who's like looking to hire for the first time, but even if you've done it a few times, you just have a bit more context for this. But if you can do it really well, that doesn't mean that you can teach it really well. Like I wish I had your videos, right, and just bought that as a training program and just put new employees through that as a foundational thing from our very first hire. Because what I learned in trying to teach people, I've gotten pretty good at it now, but initially it was just like I'm trying to communicate maybe too many steps ahead. I'm not going back to the basics, and it's like, why aren't you getting this? It's like they're literally not holding the squeegee correct. Something like that, something so basic, where you just instinctively you go and you grab it and you just like wave it around like magic wizardry on the glass, and then it's like, wait, what just happened? And then they're like holding it really weirdly and wrong. It's like trying to put a pen in the hand of a child and just get that grip. Like you don't think about it now, you just grab a pen. But they grab the pen like with a fist, and it's like if you're holding it like that, your handwriting is always going to be terrible. Like you're not really going to be able to my handwriting is terrible anyway. It doesn't matter. But so yeah, I think that's a huge hack to just invest in that time and training of those foundational things. And having a framework to put someone through.
That's it. Because so much of window cleaning is just muscle memory, like you said. If you've done it something 10,000 times, forget what you had to learn in the beginning to get to that point. And so, like you said, you can have a really good window cleaner, but they may not be a good teacher. So what I'm doing is I'm correcting some of the common mistakes that people make, so that once they have those down, now they can learn the other kind of more trickier stuff on their own, or develop their own styles, or develop their own kind of way that they do it. But they're not going to make the mistakes, right? And get frustrated. Or I had one guy that he literally fan and then wipe, because there was one area on that window he always left a mark on, but rather than figuring out why he left that mark, he just automatically wiped it. That was just it. That was his style. Yeah. Every single window, he wipe, because he knew there was a mark there. And so I stopped him. I said, "Whoa, what are you doing here?" And so I helped him break it down and figure out why are you leaving that mark? What are you doing in your method that's leaving it? Because I don't leave the mark. So there's something we can adapt here, and we finally got him where he wasn't doing that, at least not all the time. But that's the type of mentality, is people are trying to survive. So if they have a bad habit, they just try to muscle through the bad habit. But if you can just learn the fundamentals from the beginning, it just makes the rest of that technical part so much easier. And then you can go back, then you can focus on the business part. But you can't focus on the business if I can't deliver a proper product, right?
Yeah. Like just going back to the pen holding analogy, if you're holding it in a fist and then you get your 10,000 hours of reps in doing something foundational wrong like that, you're just going to end up with that sort of a thing where you're learning the corrections, but that's not going to be the quickest, easiest way. Even more seriously, that's going to start to lead to like things like RSIs, or just just not being able to work as hard for as long, because the work is harder when you're not doing it the correct way. Putting unnecessary strain on your wrist and shoulders by trying to do too many things that you could have made it simpler.
Yeah, your carpal tunnel. Yeah, one of the common things that I correct is just the pressure that people put on the glass. And I show them how little pressure I'm putting when I'm fanning. And they're like, you don't have to press on it, because they're used to kind of pushing. I said, no, when I first started, I pressed hard because that's what I felt needed to be done. And I got carpal tunnel, and I had to learn how to fan on my left hand for 6 months because I had to let this heal. But as I went on, I learned, wait a second, I don't need to push that much pressure on there, and there's just a way. As long as you have the right handle and the appropriate amount of pressure, you're not putting the wear and tear on your hand. So after that, I've gone, it was probably another 16 years without having any issues with my arms, because I learned how to do it appropriate and ergonomically, how to hold it. So it's just those little things that as a professional, when you've been doing it, 5-10 years, you don't ever think about. I break those little steps down to help them to get there.
Like I think another one, just to drive the ergonomics kind of home, is when to switch from a pole to holding the squeegee, right? When people are first learning, that doesn't come naturally, and they're like they're trying to learn two different things. It's like, I was doing it by hand, and now I've got it on a pole, but then now that it's on the pole, I don't want to take it off. And so they end up sort of contorting themselves and pretzeling themselves into these uncomfortable positions because they're not used to where that transition should. Giving this, I'm not saying this is like there's only one way to skin a cat, but the guideline I give them is basically like shoulder height. Like once you're below shoulder height, just like take it off the pole. If you had to start with it, like just work your way down to that point, and then you're good. But like once you're starting to work below this, then you're pushing yourself back, and it's more of your body have to move in more different ways. It's not very efficient, and you're likely, if you, again, like you're doing this 8 hours a day, every day, it's not insignificant. And in terms of like that has a flow-on effect to other areas of the business, like in terms of churn for employees, people just literally burning out or physically being incapable of the work because they've started to get shoulder issues or back issues or wrist issues or whatever. That then has a flow-on effect because now then your whole business is doing the same thing. Your whole business is now contorting because now we need to hire more, and we need to train more, and we need to do all of these other things because we're out of position, because we're not training correctly the first time and being able to keep people for longer. So
I get that a lot when I train waterfed, because, if you're using a waterfed pole a lot, there's a way to do it where you're not putting so much work on your shoulders and your back. I mean, there's always going to be some, because you're obviously holding a pole, no matter how light that is. It's high, there's the winds, there's all kinds of stuff. But there's ways that you can do it ergonomically where the pressure is maybe on your waist, or it's on your leg, or it's while you're cleaning, it's up against the building, and you can minimize that. And I can't tell you how many times I'm teaching people, and they got their pole and they're literally like this, and I'm like, what are you doing? Your shoulder's going to be burnt out in, half an hour. But they don't understand. They've never learned another way. And so all of that stuff, like you said, that's not only just reducing wear and tear on yourself, which is important because you are an asset to the company as a work. If you're still working as a single owner operator, or maybe you're just in the field and you have a couple employees, but because your business relies on you. But just exactly what you said, it will have some unforeseen effects by the fact that you're working inefficiently, and you're going to burn out yourself, and you're going to burn out your employees. And that just adds more expense to the overall cost of running your company.
Yeah. Love it on all the levels. Just to tie a bow on anything, any closing thoughts, Gabe? I'll put links in the description as well for like where people can contact you and for SqueegeeU and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, any closing thoughts?
No, just SqueegeeU is definitely, as what they would say, a passion project for me. I love teaching people. I love making connections. But even if I don't get someone as a client, like with the SqueegeeU podcast, we always have people on. Sometimes it's about technical stuff. Sometimes it's about business stuff, but it's always going to be something that adds value to your company. So that's something that I encourage people to watch. It's for free. And we have giveaways, and we're hopefully going to be having some sponsors soon, and they'll be having giveaways. So we really want to make it worth that. But if you feel that you want to invest some money into your business, whether it's by subscribing to the videos. I shouldn't say subscribe, because you do have access to, once you buy the videos, you have lifetime access to them. But we have consulting services. So like I'd mentioned, if you've got just a project and you need someone to kind of bounce, off of, we have several different people who are at different stages of businesses that can help you meet your goals, from growth and scaling to getting started to we have one guy who is a window cleaner, but he's also a tax professional. He runs a tax office, so he can help you get your entity all in order and get all your taxes done and make sure that you're doing what you need to do on that end if you're someone like me who hates taxes. But we have people available to, whatever you might be in your business. And then with the technical training, I'm available, man. I travel. I can help get your division started. Or if you yourself maybe been doing it 5 or 6 months and you realize you're lacking in skills, I can help you to become efficient, and I can come and meet you, work with you, with your crew, on site, and help you get stuff. In fact, one guy hired me to help him finish a project. I went down to Florida, I went to Orlando, and worked with his crew, trained, but then I made sure that that job was done because it was a deadline, had 2 days to get it done. I worked with his crew, and of course, I was the most experienced one there, but we got the job done, and I got to train his employees, so he had kind of a double bonus on that. So yeah, I helped him with bidding, I helped him with planning, knowing what tools to have, equipment, all that advice. That's all comes under our consultant program. And that's what I love to do, is just kind of be an asset to other companies like that.
Yeah, love it. And just as a final note on that, when you have that image in your head of Gabe flying out and training your crew, helping to finish a large project with your crew as a part of the training and all of that kind of thing, think about the significance of that cost, and then think about the stripped back version where you get the videos and you can just have somebody who has a proven training system teach somebody on your team how to squeegee, rather than you burning yourself out and not really teaching them the right way and then getting frustrated with them and all of that kind of thing. So definitely check that out. I think it's well worth it. And thanks very much for your time and for coming on, Gabe.
Thank you so much. It's been really nice getting to know you, both you coming on my podcast and Matt on yours. You're really the type of person I like to connect with, someone who loves to teach others, wants to be help us to be profitable, but more importantly, we get a thrill out of helping others, and that's really cool. So thank you so much for having me on and letting me part of your network.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Anytime.
If you enjoyed this conversation, you'll love our Facebook group for parents running cleaning businesses. Easiest way to find it is via warplan.au. Catch you in there.